Welcome everyone, I'm Admin1 Infinity Effects, and this is Total Carnage Listenthroughs. Today, we are delving for the first time into the Boise synth music underground. To give some backstory, earlier this year I was graciously invited into a group called the Synth Society, that is SYNTH, and it's basically a group of people in the Boise area or surrounding it who make music on synthesizers or keyboards. And recently we've been making a more concerted effort to try and promote ourselves and each other, whether people inside the Synth Society or those outside who could feasibly be brought in or otherwise, categorized the same way genre-wise. And as part of that, I took some time to reach out to a few artists whose music we hadn't heard yet, who were in the Synth Society, and one of the first bites I got, so to speak, was by this person who runs a project called Star Warrior. They have all the releases, I think, so far on Bandcamp. So far we see 3. This is the first one from September 2015. And my idea is to, over time, go through the releases in chronological order. Now, without having heard it yet, if I were to venture a guess, I would say that this is in the vein of synthwave, just going by the artwork, the whole aesthetic, especially if you look on the side here, the release called Archive Files. That definitely looks like a synthwave album. But we don't know for sure. We just know that presumably it has keyboard in it. So, starting off now, Outer Rim EP by Star Warrior. Here's the title track, the opening one, 2.5 minutes. Let's see what we got. Okay, so right off the bat, and I'm going to try to not stop it too much because I don't want to interrupt the flow, even though you can, of course, check it out for yourself. But one thing that struck me about it right away was that, it has that opening kind of hard, punchy synth riff. And I like that. It seems like the range of notes for the riff was started immediately. And then even though the kind of general pattern and cadence was the same, they would emphasize different notes more across different iterations. So it felt like in the first iteration of it, they would actually go through all the notes they planned to use for that riff. And then for the second one, to kind of give it closure, they would play one of the same notes where they would normally go to another one, if that makes sense. So that's a cool thing to start with. And it really helps build anticipation because, the beat itself is pretty halftime, it's pretty sparse, and there's, those kind of low strings underneath it. And now I'm getting kind of a little buzz. I'm not saying I'm getting a buzz, though I probably am, but there's a little low hum that's been staticky. Yeah, now it's more emphasized since the main riff and the drum beat dropped out. And we're getting these more kind of ominous strings kind of serializing upward. So this definitely has a highly cinematic feel, which you would come to expect from a lot of synthwave. Now we're back to the main riff and the beat is, more up-tempo, not halftime like it was before. Oh, cool, and it goes back to halftime, but there's a bit of a change in the way that the synth layers are mixed. So it has more of a haunting feeling, like it's kind of going in and suddenly going out. That's a nice little synth drum fill there. And what's cool about it is that, I mentioned earlier about that line that was kind of serializing upward, and this whole track is kind of overall being pulled in that direction as it goes on. It's slowly rising up in intensity and in pitch, but the same motif and feel of it is there. So we're really getting nicely fastened in for the whole album, I think. This is a good way to introduce the world of Star Warrior, assuming, of course, this is the first release ever. I like to imagine this was how Star Warrior debuted to the world. like how after that whole build-up, it's finally settled back to the main riff as a release of tension right about as the track closes. So this next track here is Sidonia. Alright, already kind of like a helicopter feel. I also like how the synths are very punchy and distinct. It's not too light, and there are light layers, but they are kind of mixed in with the harder going stuff. This is cool because it kind of stays in that zone of, you know, the sort of minimalist melody, but building up an intensity and the introduction of beat. You can hear some more layers creeping up, like, I think it sounds like a synth piano that kind of mimics the main line's melody, but it's a bit different. This feels like a slowed down helicopter in a way. And it's cool because, you know, they could have done totally straight eighth notes, but they left brief pauses in the middle there, so it's almost like triplets. And that gives it a bit more of a distinctive character. And as this goes on and on, I can hear more layers getting stacked on top of it that kind of stretch the melody out, but keep that same, you know, primal drive in it. All these forces coming here and there, some of which I can hear on the left side or the right side. Actually, the part of the character of this track, I think, is in the syncopation, like in the brief pauses that they give to different layers, especially because the layers, a lot of them are more like one note with, you know, brief deviations. So you get this kind of madcap spinning around feel to it. So far, I definitely get the sense of flow to this EP. Like, I do feel like this is the kind of track that happens once you've been nicely fastened in, you know, from the first track. This is cool because right now I hear another layer that's rising up slowly. Some more smooth, and there's another one where it sounds like it's deviating a bit from the, you know, I guess the predominant tone, if you will, of the piece. Getting us a bit high pitched and, you know, harmonizing with it more instead of like being sort of like an octave harmonization. Now all the layers are kind of coming together at once. It's like Star Warrior introduced different ones, different points. It's sort of a build-up, and now it's kind of all happening at once. I like that. You know, it's just a kind of patience in composition to do it like that, because some people, including myself, might just begin to just kind of throw all the layers at you at once, if indeed we put much layers at all. Yep, there's that feeling again of, you know, after enough climax sort of taking out some of the layers, and this time though there's a bit more lingering, like there's you know, more layers lingering than at the end of the last track, and it's going on for a bit longer. Now it's rising just a little bit for brief moments. This would sound great in a car, I think, loud speakers. So this is A New Home. Looks like this is the longest track on the album, a little over 5 minutes. Wow, I really like the way this one's going, because it's a bit of a longer melody. Like I think this is one of those instances where if you're playing around on a keyboard or really in any instrument and you let the notes hang longer, then you're more mindful of the different places they can go. And this is another instance of getting a beat just by syncopation or by, you know, pausing or muting a part of a line. I imagine that's what Star Warrior did. I think that they play the same melody they did before, but then maybe in production they removed part of the melody so it sounded more like, plonking. Just judging by the way that synth voice tends to sound, where it's kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but it's less choppy, something you could hold and sustain for a longer time. And then here we have what sounds like a nice arpeggio. Whoa. This is great because it keeps that same underlying melody, but it goes through all these different, very active 16th note melodies that go all over the place. Using different kind of synth voices and timbres. Because you get, different feels from a melody depending on what sort of instrument or timbre is used. And likewise, the choice in timbre kind of influences the choice of melody, at least in my experience. Sounds like that's synth piano, perhaps. And here it goes into a kind of different direction too, like it has the same tonal center as, say, the opening melody, but it's taking it a bit of a different direction too. Like, I think this is already my favorite, at least so far, because it might be the most thoughtfully, very patiently put together. What's cool is that, there's the kind of slow going low synth melody that's happening underneath all the arpeggiated lines or whatever. But, different points, like the arpeggiated lines will cut in and out, and it seems to come back at the right drop of a note in one of those lower melodies. Yeah, I think this one has the most emotions in it, at least for me, because, it all flows so seamlessly, but it kind of goes back and forth between moments of almost dread, which in music is enjoyable, not in life per se, but, music, and it goes between that and a sense of wonder or excitement and just wondering because, maybe I'm a bit biased because I'm seeing the title of the track, A New Home. But it does seem like, you're going to a new place for the first time. I get kind of a spinning feeling again like I did in the last one, Sidonia, but in this one it feels more wondrous, whereas in the last one, again, in a positive sense, it felt more like a doomed kind of spinning, like you were going mad in a fun way. I think I'm hearing synth bells now. Yeah, we'll see how the rest of the album goes. I like all the tracks, but I think already this might be my favorite one. Alright, Dogfight now. Now this is interesting because it has combined traits of previous tracks in that there's already pretty active 16 note sort of arpeggiated line, but over a more half-time sparse beat. At least relatively half-time relative to, the note density in this one. There's still kind of a, bumping rumble underneath. So this one feels more frantic. There we go. I was pausing for a moment because I'm wondering if this was going to happen, and sure enough it did. You'll notice that at first there was the same one note rumble underneath with the arpeggiated part playing on top. And by the way, I don't know if I'm overusing or misusing the word arpeggiated, but that's just the closest thing that comes to mind for what I'm hearing. Just, the active melody on top. Anyway, it was playing on top of the one note rumble, and of course to a degree, those different lines influence how the others sound, depending upon, what notes being played in one relative to the other, or how much changes there are. And so the active melody has a character depending on what's playing underneath, and then after a while doing it just over that one note, that lower melody started traveling around, and it's given the higher melody new character to it. So this whole track feels like a nice playful exploration of that whole thing. It's very driving, it doesn't get old. And what's cool is that, once it reaches enough layers, I know something like the beat has part of it taken out, like the hi-hats or whatever. So at that point, it gives the listener more time to really drink in what has just happened, like what the track has just built up to. Now you can hear it in clear definition, and it goes right back to the beat to add something new. And this one sounds almost desperate. That's a cool touch, by the way, that ending percussion beat where, there's like a different synth snare played every second measure. Alright, now Patronio. Interesting, so different layers playing, one note relative to each other per set of measures, and it's moving, very gradually. It just starts off with just that attack and the strings underneath. That's one thing I like about music like this, that it combines the aggressive with the ambient, and that's always like the $1 million question music for me is, ways to. Whoa. What was that? Working with Ferrari? That's cool. But anyway, yeah, just finding the right balance between the utmost and kind of ethereal atmosphere and the utmost and pure drive and power. And that's one thing I like about Star Warrior and a lot of music like this right off the bat, is that it has both going on at once, and it doesn't sound forced at all. This I think takes that idea to the maximum of all the tracks I've heard so far, and we only have one left after this, but just the fact that there's the constant attack and the constant flourishing synths underneath, and most of the time they're all playing like the same note for the most part, but you really get that sense of like the attack and the atmosphere at the same time. Here though, it's deviating from that a bit because there's melody happening over the the constant part. What's great about stuff like this is that you can hear one of the layers I think it's pulled down the note. I don't know what Star Warrior used for this, but I at least remember using, say, the synth voices in GarageBand or Logic. There were some synth voices where if you held down a note, it would kind of transform or go back and forth between different noises over time. And I hear some of that going on in the background. Here it's pretty cool because unlike in the very beginning where the layers all stay in the same lane more or less, one is staying in the same lane and the other starts off being that way but changed a little bit. I think I hear like a distorted car engine noise in the background. That would make sense given the Ferrari mention, I think. It's a neat little trick, or I should say method, that Star Warrior uses, is that you can reintroduce parts that are slightly modified based off of what has come before, or I should say since the first time that the melody came around, like in the beginning. Yeah, that's a great ending, the way it was just left to kind of wash out. Alright, so the last track now is Abandoned Planet. This is interesting. So it's a joyfully ominous, simple melody, but with like what sounds almost like synth bells in the background. Like there's sort of a jingling happening. And like that the jingling is constant, but the lower melody isn't. Or I mean it is, but different intervals. There we go. That's another good synthwave sort of thing, is the repeating ascending or descending melodies, which always sound great with that kind of synth voice. There we go. Good idea there. Introducing the beat at the right moment so that, the different part of that 4-note melody is emphasized. And again, yeah, it's a good idea. This might actually be the most exciting one, just because of those little tricks that it uses and how it's always constant and loud. What's cool is that I think, at least for a bit there, it's using the same melody, that high string part, as the underlying 16th note one, but it was done slower, so they gave it a new meaning. And then it started, rising, and now it's going into these smooth key changes, and then return to the main thing, but with, all the din happening to really drive you to the conclusion of the track, and of course the album. Yeah, I like that part right there where it sounds like it's going to repeat the same kind of key, but then it deviates a little bit. Really gives you the excitement of exploring the abandoned planet. Actually, in a way, the planet doesn't sound abandoned, but maybe it's to signify that the new arrivals have come to take the spoils. make a new planet. Like there's like sort of a lead solo type of thing happening right now. Weird, the track sounded like it cut off a bit early, but it's no big deal. So thank you, Star Warrior, for sharing that stuff, and I look forward to hearing how you've evolved over the years, because this was over 6 years ago, and I definitely intend to listen to it more, especially as I'm doing things like, say, playing a game or exercising or creating something. So we'll also explore some more Synth Society stuff over time. So this could be the start of a good new tradition. Until then, thanks very much for watching, for listening, and check out Star Warrior. It's some good stuff. See you next time.